Thank you very much, Laura May. The Toronto Youth Cabinet's Education Working Group launched the Reclaim Our Voice campaign. Through this campaign, we heard from students, parents, and teachers alike across the city for the need to urgently address systemic racism in schools. Time and time again, Black and Indigenous and racialized students shared their treatment and experiences in their classrooms of racism, and a teacher population not representative of them. Students told us the curriculum is not responsive to their needs and interests, nor culturally relevant to or reflective of their lived experiences. And we heard stories of Black and Indigenous students continuing to be pushed out of school, expelled, and suspended at disproportionate rates compared to their white peers. For decades, Black and Indigenous and racialized students have been forgotten, neglected, ignored, and erased, both by the institution of education and those in government. Historically, the education system was never meant for the success of Black and Indigenous students. Rather, they were spaces that actively harmed us. This institution of education has now reflected on its harmful anti-Black and anti-Indigenous past, and therefore it cannot build a successful future for all of its students. That is why we are calling for urgent action from all levels, from the Ministry of Education to the school boards. The provincial government must recognize that this is a province-wide issue, and so it needs a province-wide solution. First, the ministry must commit to revising the curriculum from kindergarten to grade 12 to fulfill the recommendation on education for reconciliation in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report and include Indigenous histories in the curriculum. The same must be done to reflect the history and contributions of Black Canadians to Canada. We are also asking that all school boards take on an anti-racism approach by collecting disaggregated race-based student data. By 2021, the ministry's target of 2023 is not good enough, and the province must ensure that there is a standardized collection of the data across school boards in the province. The data will expose the truth on what is going on in our schools and the disparities that exist. School boards must also commit to a complete end of streaming in all of their schools by 2023, and must conduct a review on the School Resource Officer program. We heard students who were profiled by SROs and who were made to feel uncomfortable and unwelcomed in their schools. Police have never will and will never be and belong in schools. The wait is over, and the long calls for systemic change can no longer be ignored. School boards and the government must commit to take real measures to address anti-Black, brown, and Indigenous racism. This is a systemic problem that has gone on for far too long and critically needs to be addressed. However, the Toronto Youth Cabinet does acknowledge the Toronto District School Board for listening to communities' demands to make their schools more inclusive and equitable, and taking steps to collect disaggregated race-based data to address systemic racism, removing the SROs from their schools, and committing to end streaming in all its secondary schools. These efforts have seen academic improvements with Black, Indigenous, and racialized students. Although the TDSB is far from perfect, all boards should, at the bare minimum, listen to the demands of the vulnerable communities that they are meant to serve. Many students continue to experience racism in their schools, and action targeting the root causes have not materialized. This is not just a problem found in an individual school, nor is this a problem found in one board. It is a system-wide problem that impacts us all. Urgent action needs to be taken. The facts and the solutions are there. Research has been conducted, although the need for research is continuous. We have and know what we need to do to address the roots of anti-Black, Brown, and Indigenous racism. From the Stephen Lewis Report on Race Relations in 1992, the Review of the Roots of Youth Violence, 2008, by Dr. Alvin Curlin and the Honorable Roy McMurtry, and Towards Race Equity in Education in 2017 by Dr. Carl James and Tana Turner, there have been countless reports and recommendations that have still not been implemented. Education, being one of the most important foundations an individual can have, is supposed to help ensure that all students are treated equally, equitably. So it is necessary to have an education system that truly gives that equivalent opportunity for the success that we hope for. Enough has not been done to create a more equitable system for Black, Indigenous, and racialized students. Frankly, we are tired of asking just for more in action. Racism is not a little thing, so it should not be treated with little actions. Big and drastic steps need to be taken to address the big problem of racism. If we continue to feel a sense of accomplishment by our little steps and for our claims of striving for diversity and inclusiveness, the wait for progress will continue, and communities will remain disadvantaged. In the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we are now faced with the fact, my friends, that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is time for vigorous and positive action. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to call Sally, president of the Ontario